Hello everyone, this is TM Craze and I'm recording this kind of like just as I woke up, so if I sound a little groggy or whatever, that's why. So it's kind of like come to my attention that I reached 100 subscribers and, you know, small milestone, but hey, you know, you take those and, you know, you kind of do the YouTuber thing where you do something special for that milestone. And so I kind of thought, since people do like these tier lists and all that other stuff, you know, I figure, hey, let's go do a Strinova tier list with some characters that are from the Chinese servers. Well, only currently released there. Like Eika, Galatea, and Fragrans here. So, this is a Strinova tier list. Probably not a very good one. But this is where I think all of them should be ranked, and you know, this is my tier list. So if you agree or disagree with it, then you know, it's kind of like whatever, because again, this is my tier list. You can kind of go make your own if you feel differently about it. Alright, so Yvette. Yvette kind of ends up going in A here. Because she's kind of this like really nice controller that has a really nice effect, right? The ice fields make the enemies standing within it take 30% more damage, and you know, that already kind of on its own is already insane, right? On top of the ice fields just kind of like making you slip and slide and all those other things. And while she is kind of like harder to play because you have to kind of micromanage Faye and being like Yvette normally, you can kind of cut down on it slightly just by kind of like waiting on when you pop Faye out and then just, you know, kind of like wreaking havoc. She's kind of like good on every map. Kind of, she is. It's just, you kind of like, you know, it's much like the same as the other controller here, which we'll get to soon. But you kind of have to be, what is it, a fan of Yvette to really play Yvette. Because while the other controller is pretty much like a tier below, she's still plenty strong in her own right. Oh, right, I also forgot to mention that Yvette's MP5 is also pretty good. It's not it doesn't have like the greatest damage or like the lowest recoil, but you know, you kind of, what is it, pair the damage of the MP5 with the fragile effect, the plus 30% damage taken when the enemy stands in an ice field, and it just kind of snowballs out of control, right? And again, this kind of like applies to the other characters as well, because it's a debuff that applies per enemy. So yeah. Celestia, or as the people in the Chinese servers know her, like as I know her, Xingwei. Celestia ends up kind of being like a C tier. Normally she'd be like an S tier, right? But considering the recent patch that we're in, Celestia is just kind of okay now, because they changed a lot from last season to this current season as of the time of this video, where Celestia's armor is not permanent anymore, and already that in itself is kind of a huge change. I mean, another one too is that like an armor cap got introduced because of Celestia, so certain characters' thresholds are like pretty much guaranteed because the armor cap is 210, and that's a pretty damn low armor cap. Also, if you're kind of expecting me to kind of go over the abilities of each character, I'm not going to. She has like a really nice gun though, Celestia. Her FAMAS is like pretty easy to control, and like you can beam with it if you know how to manage the recoil. I mean, you can kind of beam with every character, but like Celestia is pretty straightforward on how you do that. There's also a 2-round, I think? 2-round burst option here for Celestia if you want to take that. It's not like the worst thing in the world if you take that, but like, you know, people are gonna be still gonna be pretty mad at you for taking the burst option. I would kind of like have more to elaborate, but again, she's just in a decent spot now because her armor got changed from being a permanent fixture to only a temporary fixture. Like the rest of her kit was always pretty straightforward. I mean, I guess I could say that like there's a very obnoxious flash on her Awakening 2 or her Awakening 3, which is just straightforward and gives her more armor. But like, that's about it, really. Alright, on to Nobu. Nobu. Personally, right? I know this is kind of like a hot take, but I feel like Nobu would probably just end up being a C tier. And just real quick, because let me just get the snipers out of the way and just let me rename this. I'll elaborate on this later. But like, these two kind of go into their own category, and I'll just add another. There, okay, cool. Nobunaga, realistically, outside of his Awakening 2 and his ultimate, has these pylons, right? These pylons buff his armor regen and his rate of fire. And while those are like really great buffs to have, I don't know if you've kind of noticed about it, but like all they kind of do is just augment his fragging capability. And so the reason why I kind of have Nobunaga as C tier here is because the utility he does provide is like really strong once he gets rolling. And like if he's actually like killing people. But if he's not killing people, then he's kind of a wasted slot in my opinion, right? Because at that point you could have ran like tons of different characters that would have like much more impact if you're not killing people compared to Nobunaga. Now don't get me wrong, right? The EMP that disables abilities is like very, very, very obnoxious. And can easily swing a team fight, right? And A2 being an Awakening 2 being able to scan people like just for stepping in the range of the pylons, insane. But apart from that, it's not like if you're not killing, you're not getting the value. Also, just kind of a quick point to bring up here. Nobunaga has the DMR with the lowest amount of well, I guess in this case, has the DMR with the highest spread number, meaning his hip fire and shoulder fire is really good. His recoil is like kind of bad actually for what it is, because he has like a high rate of fire, so it's kind of, I don't know. Whenever I try to play this guy, I cannot manage his recoil, so if you feel differently, that's okay. I'm not claiming to be the best Nobunaga here, but that's kind of like how I feel about him. Eika. It's not Eika, by the way. It's Eika. That's the official localization. I'm sorry if people are calling her Eika. The localization here is Eika. If you kind of want to fight over that, go for it, but that's kind of where it lies. So, C tier. I mean, she kind of ends up in the same place, I feel, as Celestia and Nobu. Because B tiers will be kind of highly contested as we go on. I'll put her at C tier for now. So, So Eika's kind of issue is just that she doesn't have an escape tool. Despite being like a an escape tool or a what is it? Or a sustain option, despite being a duelist that kind of just like wants to be up in your face and kind of running you down. Like not built into her kit like at base anyway. Because she has it on her Awakening 2, but you kind of have to work up to that, right? And until you get to that point, you are kind of like, you know, out of luck there. Eika would have been higher, actually, had they not made one change to the ultimate, Fire NATO. But as I think as it stands, like this is kind of like the initial ranking as until I go through the entire list, but she stands kind of like right here right now because she does like a really good damage. Like they buffed the spread so that it's tighter, and then they buffed her damage slightly. But the Fire NATO kind of like lost its suction effect, so it kind of just acts like a regular wind nade that just does damage now. So you know that kind of blows if you're an Eika main. I mean, you still kind of net gained by having more damage and just like more consistent damage, like being able to actually kill. But again, this is tentative, so we'll get back to Eika. Audrey, easy A tier. I feel like this one and Baimo next are gonna. I mean, yeah, I feel like Audrey, Baimo, and Fuschia are gonna be very controversial to people playing the current Strinova beta that's out right now instead of like the Chinese servers. But like I'll explain these as I go on. I think my English speaking Chinese server brethren are gonna like understand why I place Baimo where he is, but and they also already understand why Audrey's here at A. But like I think if you're right now a global player, this placement's not gonna make a ton of sense, because either you think Audrey should belong in an S tier or Audrey should be in D tier. Well, kind of like, let me give my perspective on this, right? Audrey is at the same time a noob trap, but at the same time can just wreak havoc at higher elos. And she wreaks havoc at higher elos not because of her turret, not because of her turret form. It's because of that royal shield that she gets whenever she ADSs. If you've ever played Rainbow Six Siege and ever played Blackbeard before, then you kind of already understand fundamentally why having a face shield is plenty strong, and is why it's kind of like really cheesy. Now granted, this game doesn't have a one-shot headshot like Siege does, so it's not super impactful compared to there, but being able to soak up any amount of damage beforehand is still kind of insane, because that's it. Because it doesn't matter how much damage it takes, it'll just eat it, right? So you can eat a shot from a sniper, you can eat a shot from Reiichi, you can eat a shot from Maddelena, you can eat like multiple shots from like the fully automatic characters too, and it just makes you very like hard to kill for no reason. Apart from that, like on the other end of the spectrum, like, you know, turret form is just like really annoying to deal with for the people in lower ranks, just because they don't group up and like kind of just firing squad the Audrey. So, you know, that's kind of the obnoxious thing there. I don't think there's like a whole lot else to kind of go over there. Alright, Baimo. This guy. Kind of belongs here. Here's the first S tier. And I know it's gonna be kind of expected, I think, but it's kind of not for the reasons you think, right? So Baimo is an S tier character. but he's also a very hard character to play because it's kind of very obvious who's a really good Baimo and who's a really bad one. And there's a lot of stuff you can do to min-max his playstyle and just get a lot out of him. I would say he's like the character with the highest skill ceiling, I think. Because there's a lot of like small optimizations you can do for this guy to really just make him the most obnoxious thing in the world. And he's pretty flexible in what he can play, right? Well, so long as he don't run slugs on this guy. But, you know, you can play him as a flanker. You can play him as a lurker. Or you can just play him with the team and just be like an absolute nuisance to the enemy. I mean, either way, you are a nuisance. Just depends on the level of interactivity with your team. And his shotgun hurts. Right? Like, I think that shotgun is like has the most consistent damage like out of all of these weapons by far. Because sure, the rest of the weapons are pretty consistent too, but the time to kill on him is always pretty consistent unless you kind of get screwed over. Between Awakening 2 and Awakening 3, I think most people will choose the latter just because there's a funny thing you can do with his clone where if you flick quickly in a different direction, the clone will actually just only take into account where you were looking at the start and not where you're actually going, so you can actually throw people off like that. But hey, I'm not dissuading you from using the Awakening 2 where you just like flashbang people and just make their life a living hell. Although I think that's for more of a frontline, like a more of a fucking like in-your-face Baimo compared to a backshot Baimo, which is kind of what he's known for, right? I don't really have much else to talk about this guy, so I think I'm in a pretty good spot to leave it end off there. Wow, that was a sentence of all time. And we're just gonna go next to Fuschia. People are gonna fucking hate me for this if you're from the global server. This character is unequivocally not that amazing. She can't go that aggro. She's not Reina, first off. She's not the same person as Reina in Valorant, because Reina has a blind that allows her to limit the opponent's vision and just cause them hell, and has self-augmenting abilities like an invis or regenerating health. Fuschia has a scan. Fuscia's scan range, while pretty large, is also pretty small at the same time, because while the overall radius is big, the actual distance between you and the enemy that it'll reach, the maximum distance, is actually pretty small. So you end up kind of having to play more cautious to try and fish for info and get people within the scan's range. You can't even really lurk with this character because the Scar's recoil is pretty dog water, and she gets rate of fire buffs, so it just kind of becomes uncontrollable at a certain point. The other thing here too is that Fuscia's scan is very selfish. She'll, the people she scans will only appear to her and not to her teammates. So unless you're in a stack, or unless you start pinging, or start using voice comms, nobody's actually going to know who you scanned or where they are. It's kind of rough to get the sort of value that you want out of her. I mean, don't get me wrong, once Fuschia starts going, gets a kill, gets to regen, and then gets another 1v1, and then same thing, same loop. She's a really oppressive character to deal with, But as it stands, I think a lot of people are overblowing how good Fuschia is, and how much better people are there are contesting for this slot. Because for this slot, you could use Nobu in this case. You could use Konami. You could use like some of the other characters that are coming up in this tier list that also have like some form of scan, and you would just kind of find more value team-wide comparatively to having a very selfish, very like slow-paced like info-gathering character like Fuschia. Apparently they're going to rework her, but as it stands right now in the Chinese server, nothing's happened right now. Alright, Flavia. Flavia kind of ends up being your B tier here, right? Because she's plenty strong, but I mean, it's not even that she's like locked to defense. It's that comparing Baimo to Flavia, or like I guess other way around, Flavia to Baimo, it's like not even a contest. It's just that Flavia is easier to what is it? Get the hang of. Because all you really have to do on Flavia is just kind of play around her Q, and then in theory you just basically never die. And Flavia gets her ults really fast because you just have to take a certain amount of damage and you'll get temporary ult points. And so that can greatly cut down on the amount of ult points you need to use your ultimate. So you can see like Flavia basically ult like every other round essentially, depending on how it goes. Her gun's good, right? The Vector, it's plenty strong. Has a really high rate of fire. The recoil for what it is pretty low. It will kind of screw you over in medium and like your long range engagements, but at the same time, if you're playing Flavia, you really shouldn't be taking long range engagements anyways. It's just a nightmare to deal with a Flavia who knows what she's doing. But at the same time, Baimo is way more obnoxious and way more like suffocating to fight compared to Flavia. Flavia really just like does kind of die if she has like more than 2 people looking at her. Galatea, so this is a character that's only in China right now. I'd make another category here being like, oh, China only right now, but let's give you my thoughts on an unreleased character in global right now. And because of all the buffs she's gotten recently, actually. Galatea ends up kind of like sitting around this middle B tier here, where she's not super strong. Like her gun is a worse off version of a different characters that's still like on the bench right now. But because of like how like what they like rolled into her base kit now, she's just like a really good like scanning option for both sides because she's also part of Urbino. So I guess I do have to explain this one. Galatea has these cards that she can throw out that will, after a certain point in time or whatever, create clones, and she'll create clones if she sticks on walls and stuff. That's kind of all they used to do in the past, but as of this recent patch, they rolled one of her awakenings into her base kit, so now Galatea can just kind of, throw one of her clones into the open and it'll start scanning people. And it's a team-wide scan as well, so like it can get pretty obnoxious pretty fast. And that's kind of a reason why, you know, you want to shoot the Galatea clones. Her ultimate is like the lowest base cost ultimate too. Only 5 ult points just because like she just throws more clones out and that's kind of it. And so Galatea ends up being this kind of character now where she can still go for a flank, she can still lurk and go for a flank and stuff, but her real like quote-unquote value here, like what you get out of her now mainly is just using her as kind of like a safe long-range option to scan people like on defense and just make it hard for them to do anything. It's kind of much in the same way that Economy and Lawine coming up next do their scans, but you know, before this, defense really hadn't had like a really nice long-range scan option. Because again, another character that scans is like on the bench for defense, but as it stands right now, Nobu, like sure his scans like persist and stuff like as well, but he has to place those down, and then those are still his pylons, so they can just get shot out and then there's no more scans, right? So to have like a really like nice safe option that you don't have to set up is, you know, kind of like does wonders, right? It does a lot for defense. Apart from that, really kind of like what holds Galatea back from being placed higher is just kind of like the hitbox for the cards is like really huge, so they'll just like clip on a lot of things and just kind of spawn the clone early, and it's just kind of really frustrating. Now let's go to Lawine. Lawine pretty much is like de facto A tier, because, well, she's not like actually like super strong. Like she's not like overtly busted. She is kind of like the backbone to your attacking team, because it's her and another character that just kind of form this tanky like information gathering duo. Lawine has a knife that she can throw from long range, and then we'll send out pulses, like a circular pulse that'll scan people it comes into contact with. I don't know how else to really describe that, right? But that's kind of like Lawine's entire value right there, because it allows offense to kind of like gather the info that they need without having to expose themselves, and to just kind of be able to get it from a safe position. Because otherwise they'd have to use their bodies, and you know, even if you have Stringify, using your body to gain information is kind of rough. Her gun, the XM8, is alright. There's not like a lot of recoil to it, but like it can really mess you up if you're like not careful about it, right? I won't really go into the awakenings, but I will say about the ultimate that like it is like the weakest part of her kit, where it's kind of this straight line that she can go invisible in, but if she wants to step out of it, she has to account for the equip timer on her gun, and that can easily screw you up if you're not careful about it. It won't actually like lose you too many gunfights, but it can definitely lose you the odd gunfight just because like Lawine has to pull out her gun. Alright, next on the list here, Reiichi. Reiichi also kind of like ends up being like a solid B tier here. I think Eika kind of will stay where she is. I think Eika will definitely stay where she is, but Reiichi, what is it? The weaker of the two smokers, but like has like two really nice maps for him that just are really oppressive when you play him there. When one of those maps is in the global beta right now, Kachi. The other one is China only right now, so I'm not gonna mention it here. But Reiichi that knows his lineups is really obnoxious, because you can't really do a whole lot when the Reiichi has like optimal smoke walls. Because, you know, if you've played the game, you know that he has this like device, this umbrella that he can pull out to make what's essentially like a non-infinite range Viper Wall. And then it'll cut off like a ton of like lines of sight and stuff like that. Most people right now in the global beta are not doing super amazing Reiichi walls, but a lot of stuff in the Chinese server is very min-maxed. And you just get these very obnoxious Reiichi walls that are very terrible to fight and just kind of end up being really, really, really annoying to deal with. It's worth mentioning here the awakenings, well, just awakening 3 and the gun as well. Like, what is it? I don't know if you put a pin in the DMR in the DMR thing I put for Nobu, but like here we're gonna bring it up again for Reiichi and Maddelena coming up next. But Reiichi's DMR does the most damage out of all 3 DMRs. Nobu's DMR does like 95 damage per headshot, but has a high rate of fire. Reiichi does 180 per headshot, but has a very slow rate of fire in comparison, and pretty high recoil as well, just because it hits hard and all that stuff. So that 180 is already kind of like enough to one-shot people like round 1. But even then, it's still very potent on the subsequent rounds. It's still basically a guaranteed 2-tap no matter what you do. And again, it's just kind of like really, really, really obnoxious to fight a Reiichi that's hitting headshots, because you try and peek into this guy and it's effectively the same thing as trying to peek into a sniper, where you know, you just kind of get domed, in this case twice, and then you're down, and now you're kind of useless. So yeah. And then the Awakening 3 is just the one that lets your teammates see through the current, I think it's called, the Viper Wall. And that opens up a lot more suboptimal lineups that you can just use to make it like a living nightmare for your opponents to try and push you, because they can't see you. You see them like through your current, and then you're just like lining up headshots, and you know, it's kind of hard to push somebody when they're staring at you through a smoke, essentially. Maddelena kind of like, this is the character I main a lot if you've actually like looked at my channel. But this character kind of solidly belongs in B tier, because she's the other controller I was talking about with Yvette. But she's arguably like not as good as Yvette, because she doesn't provide a damage amp comparatively to Yvette. Her ability is still really strong though. Like she'll paint an area like with a pretty decent splatter range, and that'll just stop you from being able to go in or out of paper form. If you're already in it, of course you can still go out of it, but if you're in it as like normal form, and you try and go into paper form, it's not gonna happen. And the higher rank you go, the more you abuse the Stringify mechanic, so you know, just kind of like having an infinite slow nade is kind of really obnoxious and just like hell, right? And what is it? Her ultimate just kind of like adds on top of this. I think by far it is the most like oppressive ult, if we're not talking about Meredith's. But that's for a different reason. But like, Maddelena's ult is like just so debilitating. It's the same thing that, what is it? Her skill does, but on a larger scale. And just, if you've ever been inside of Maddelena ult and trying to do this team fight and like trying to use the stringify mechanic while the defenders or the attackers get to use the mechanic on you, you'll know like how really terrible this is. Like you'll understand that this is just a nightmare of an ultimate to deal with, because you can't shoot it out either. Maddelena will just kind of like throw this out, and it'll just like slowly expand over time to cover a large area, and you either just kind of like have to run out of it, or if you're already in the site, you just have to kind of fight within it. And again, just nightmare stuff. Nightmare stuff. The only other notable thing to mention about Maddelena is her gun. And this is the last DMR here. Maddelena's gun by far, I think, is the strongest DMR, like overall, because it's just kind of a middle ground of both Nobunaga and Reiichi. If she fires slower than Reiichi, slower than Nobunaga, faster than Reiichi, and also has the middle ground option of damage as well. Well, she'll do 107 a headshot compared to Reiichi's 180 and Nobu's like 95. All I know is that Nobu just doesn't hit 100 per headshot. And so when you kind of factor in like the pretty manageable recoil, because again she's this middle ground option in terms of her DMR, you just kind of like are able to 2-tap people and just be an absolute menace. Also, people often do like what I like to kind of coin it as paper spam, where you can do this on toggle too, but like where you just hold down your paper button and then you just start like either shoulder aiming and left click, or just like left clicking. Maddelena technically has a better version of this, because her first hipfire shot always is just super accurate, and because you're always like there's a natural delay whenever you paper spam. You always get that pinpoint accuracy no matter what. It's kind of iffy when you start moving, but you know, again, like it's still plenty more than enough to just like be hard to hit while also doing respectable damage. Because even if you hit a body shot with this, it's still 50 damage, and like 50 damage is 50 damage. That's still like a lot. Meredith kind of like does belong in A tier here. So Meredith is the other smoker here that kind of competes with Reiichi, but she has overall better maps for her that just kind of like, you know, like she can make use of. But if you've played Meredith, you're kind of like wondering why people consider her like a smoker when her base kit doesn't do any form of smoking at all. And that's just kind of like because like the Awakening 3 is just kind of like tied to her image, and it's kind of just like tied to like this whole idea about like Reiichi gets quote unquote value, like you get the most out of them right now, meanwhile you get the most out of Meredith later on, just because Meredith's smokes / sandfields not only apply a ton of like nasty debuffs onto the enemy, but also they smoke like pretty large amounts. And you should honestly be taking the upgrade that lets you have 2 sandfields, so that you can just cover like a ton of different areas. She also has a thing, like a passive thing, where she can float whenever she ADSs or uses nades. And it also really helps with peeking, because you can do like these high-low setups where you peek with the person peeking the angle, and like it's just really like rough to shoot at. And her ultimate is just kind of this like big sand bubble that she puts down that like limits everybody's line of sight. It's kind of nice for guaranteeing a plant, among other things, but it is kind of exploitable if the enemy team has scans, if the defenders have scans. The AUG has some pretty high kick, some pretty high recoil, but like the damage is really respectable, and you can kind of like augment the recoil just by like floating in the air, so that like naturally you're having to pull down more. Otherwise, like I don't know, like these descriptions are pretty straightforward, right? They're not crazy. These two though, these two are the fun one. I'll just put this one here. But first we'll explain Michele here. Michele, for POS, for defense, is kind of the whole reason why the fence kind of gets rounds in the first place. Her gun, her M4, has super low recoil, respectable damage, and respectable rate of fire as well. It's not going to be outputting like a ton of damage, but you can absolutely beam people with it, and she has an Awakening 3 that augments the rate of fire, so that kind of does not help things. But the whole kind of, what is it, reason why Michele ends up being S tier is just kind of, what is it, because of her protectors or whatever they're localized as, the turrets, the drones. Michelle's turrets, when she gets her A1, will scan people like that they zap, and that is like a team-wide and that is a team-wide scan. So you know, you hit like 2 or 3 people once, and then you just kind of like get this free info on where they are, and you can just kind of rotate. Now, that's not entirely broken by itself, but it's more that Michele can kind of be on the other side of the map, and the turrets will still do this, and so then it just makes rotating a lot easier. It also just makes it a lot easier to kind of like intuitively tell like what's going on a different site just cause of it. And that's kind of like really all it is. Like, it's just the turrets being able to scan and zap people for team-wide information, and just kind of just being nuisances to deal with anyways, because you have to shoot them out or they'll keep zapping you. And like, they still do respectable damage. The ultimate is just basically like a big version of the turrets, and if left alone will absolutely just like chunk people down for like massive amounts of HP. Improperly placed though, it can just be like, what is it, a damage sponge, and even then that's still kind of like useful in its own right, because it would theoretically allow you to just kind of like push while the big turret just kind of eats damage. But more often than not, you can't do that, and you have to be smart about placing it. I guess that's like 25% of the reason why Michele's also like really broken, is because of that thing as well. Like, the amount of damage it does is like insane, and it will like kill at least like 2 or 3 or even like ace at once. It's kind of crazy actually. And then Ming, the other S tier. We'll get to this character. Ming is single-handedly the exact reason why attack can even be aggressive. Without Ming and only Lawine, this shit just does not happen. I had yet to mention the passives at all at this point, but like, I mentioned it on some characters, but like, this is the one I'm gonna focus on the most. Ming's passive in her base kit that she does not have to get Awakening 1-4. It's like, if her ball hits a deployable, hits an enemy, or if she shoots a deployable or shoots an enemy, she will take that person's armor, that person or object's armor, and add it to her own. This, if if you're not using it with the with the ultimate, it will never overcap, but she will continuously regen armor and just make it a complete nightmare for you to kill her. On top of the white boxes also giving armor as is, so it's just kind of like an insane amount of armor regen that just like unless you like fight her as a team, and even then because Ming has an AK, like she can still very much decimate you all at once depending on how she plays it. You are not killing Ming. Ming can easily eat like 300 damage at once, no problem, and she doesn't even have to try to do that. She will just do that. Now I mentioned the skill where she throws out a little ball of like plasma that travels along a set path and that she can manually detonate. The ball will do 40 armor damage in total, like stripping the enemy of their armor. I think 60 total. I don't know. There's like 3 pulses to it, I think. Point being is that if it hits multiple objects or people, it'll each strip them of 40 armor, like baseline, I guess. And even if you don't have A2, that's a lot of armor to be stripping of your enemies, and that's less effective health that they have to work with to fight you. So you kind of just have to be really, really, really careful about, if you're like on defense anyway, you have to be really careful about how you fight Ming, because Ming is just your worst nightmare. Absolutely. And as Ming, you should be the nightmare that defenders like fear, because you are allowed to be so much more aggressive than you reasonably should be able to, and just cause like tons of havoc towards the enemy. And then the ultimate is just kind of there. It just gives you 100 flat what is it? Over armor. And I think it'll, what is it? Yeah, it'll also get you to the armor cap of 210. Maybe just a bit over 215, but it's just more armor, and it works well with her passive to just kind of like stay in a constant flux of over armor. Like in general, Ming is just really strong, and without Ming, attackers would never win rounds. Wholeheartedly, they would never win rounds. So keep that in mind next time whenever you play Strinova. Do you have a Ming and a Lawine? If the answer is no, you've already kind of lost the round, because relying on Fuschia to do the job of those two is kind of impossible. And if you are relying on Fuschia to do that job, good luck with that. It's not nearly as effective as you think it is. And then the last character before we get into snipers. Fragrans, this character. She's in D tier because she's really not that strong. She has Michele's M4, just slightly worse. But the big thing is that she has like literal limited use abilities. Like you can only use her ability 3 times and that's it. It does not recharge. And her ultimate is just kind of like a mix of both options you can choose with the ability, and it's just, and it takes you out of the fight, so you lose a gun there, so that's cool. And the effects that the skill provides is either a 12.5% rate of fire buff or a 12.5% speed buff. Mostly you'll be using the speed buff because you wanna like go really fast and like take sights really fast, like on attack, because like this is an attack only character. Fragrans, by the way. Eika is also only a attack only character, but you know, you would take Fragrans in this situation, but she just doesn't do a whole lot like otherwise, and she doesn't really have anything else to help. What is it? To help with the team. Like, she has some healing and it can be like very potent, but like that's not Fragrans' job, right? So If you're kind of like only using Fragrans as healing, then there's kind of an issue there. I think that's probably like the shortest section out of all of these. And then now we'll get to sniper tier. Sniper. Kokona and Kanami. Kokona has the intervention. Kanami has the Barret. Kokona is like hits for less with her charge shots, but has a better cycle rate compared to Kanami, who cycles her bolts slower. Even though it's a Barret and she really shouldn't be cycling the bolts anyways, because that's a semi-automatic weapon, but sure. Apart from those comparisons, Kokona is a support class character on defense, the PUS. She has these drones that she can throw out onto her teammates or to herself, and they will heal. HP. It's not like a crazy amount, but hey, you know, like it'll heal HP because the white boxes just only heal armor. She can upgrade her drone to be able to heal armor as well, but most of them will probably just take the upgrade that makes the drone tangible to shoot at, so that they can survive like an opposing enemy's like headshot or like a Reiichi headshot, something like that. She's not amazing, just because even if she provides all of this stuff on defense, like even her ultimate is even like a revive, but she's still a sniper, right? And you're playing a sniper into a bomb defusal game mode where they can just easily go into Stringify and just kind of like cut your aim in half, like literally, because like you'll be aiming at the head and then you just turn to Stringify and now it's impossible. Like if you're not good with a sniper, if you don't have those like split-second reaction times and like can't aim for the head, you kind of like auto lose. So, you know, just kind of keep that in mind, right? Kanami fares a little bit better here because even with the fully charged body shot, she will absolutely just one-shot somebody. But it still kind of just doesn't change the fact that while Kanami provides scan utility, which I'll get to in a bit, you have to hit your shots. And if you're not hitting your shots and you're not letting the scope charge up to that fully charged body shot, it is just functionally useless. It is, like, she is just functionally useless as a character, and that slot could have gone to somebody else. Kanami has a skill where she'll put like a sound wave onto the end of her Barret, and she'll fire it, and that will provide scans to your team, and you know, again, like show the enemy across the map. They can shoot it out, however, and like it doesn't take much to shoot it out, but like it can get pretty annoying for the defenders to shoot that out. Apart from that, like, it's not a whole lot. The ultimate is kind of like this suction field that will also like scan enemies and concuss them. But like, again, like it doesn't really matter because you need to be able to oh wow, words. You need to be able to shoot people, and if you're not shooting people, I would literally rather have like a different a character in this slot. Now obviously there are like exceptions to this. Like if you're like just like you're that good at snipers, then sure, go ahead, like I'll gladly have you on my team, but otherwise it's kind of a tough sell, right? It is just kind of like a tough sell on having snipers in the team. And that's kind of just the tier list I have here. I hope I've like explained in detail enough like why I would place these characters where they are. And I'm expecting to get some like some comments down below on, you know, why my opinion is wrong and stuff like that. This is my tier list. So these are my opinions. You are free to judge me though and call me a dumbass. Like I probably won't respond to your comment. Like I read those, but like I won't respond to it. But hey, there you go. This is the tier list of all time, folks. I don't really know how to end a video off, so I guess I'll just say like, hey, I'll see you in the next like dog shit montage I make. So there you go. I'll see you all next time.